Donor-advised funds are becoming increasingly popular in charitable giving, offering donors the flexibility and tax advantages. But are they the right choice for you? Let's jump into it. Welcome back, Insiders. My name is Bill Smith, CEO and founder of W.A. Smith Financial Group. And in this week's Ascend 360 Insider, I'm going to explain everything you need to know about donor-advised funds. So stick around, because at the end, I'm going to share some tips on how you can determine if a donor-advised fund aligns with your philanthropic goals. All right, let's jump into it. What are donor-advised funds? Donor-advised funds, or DAFs, are charitable giving accounts. They're administered by public charities or financial institutions and provide some tax benefits. Donor-advised funds have seen significant growth in recent years, and the 2024 study on DAFs found that there were over 600,000 inbound contributions to donor-advised funds and more than 2.25 million outbound grants from donor-advised funds between 2014 and 2022, covering over 50,000 donor-advised fund accounts. So donors contribute money or assets, and they receive an immediate tax benefit and recommend at the same time qualified charities to give that money to over time. Depending on the donor-advised fund determines the flexibility that you would have in order to give to the particular charity that you would choose or want to have your money go to. So do your homework. All right, the second thing, when you really break this down and unpack it, are the investment options. So several investment options are available. So not only can you make that gift and get an immediate tax deduction with that donor-advised fund, you could also have some robust investment management strategies, including diversified investment pools and even investment advisory services professionally managed by a manager. So what are the pros of using donor-advised funds? You might be asking yourself. Well, number one, let's look at the tax advantages. Donor-advised funds offer tax benefits to those who donate the money or the asset into the fund. The donors receive an immediate tax deduction for contributions to the donor-advised fund up to 60% of their AGI or adjusted gross income for a cash gift. The second big thing, really, of many, flexibility and control, is super important. I think that's one of the big things that when you look at giving a gift is you lose control. Well, these donor-advised funds give you that flexibility. Again, we talked about investment options, different strategies, some immediate tax benefits. So you not only have that flexibility to do all that, but also control that donors can separate the timing of their charitable contribution, giving you a lot of control, right? So if you want to give a little this year, a little next year, boom, that works great. You can take the upfront tax deduction, and this is so big. Then after the tax deduction, you can make those grants to charities on their own schedule or your schedule that makes sense for what you want to do. Donor-advised funds are simple and they streamline. They're like a centralized vehicle, like dumping all your money into this bucket, and you get this immediate kind of tax deduction. They provide a centralized vehicle for record keeping, grants to multiple charities, so it simplifies a lot of the things that you would normally need to do when making that kind of a cash gift. It can be really helpful. So what are the cons? You know, we've talked about a lot of the pros. What are the cons? With everything, you have the pros and cons. So there is no legal requirement, number one, for a donor-advised fund sponsor to distribute funds to the charity within a specific time frame. So although you have the control to do so, there is no requirement to distribute within that time frame. So this has led to concerns that donated assets into the fund may not be granted out promptly, reducing the immediate charitable impact that you were hoping to achieve when putting the money in. Limited nonprofit options, and this is a big one. Another con is that donor-advised funds, and again, this is why you have to shop these around and look at them and determine what's the most important thing to you when it comes to your donation and your charitable gift. But they typically require donations to IRS-approved charities. Has to be a 501c3. This means that there is a limited pool of organizations or nonprofits, especially in some of these niche or specific cause situations that you may be accustomed to giving to. The other thing with donor-advised funds that I think could be a negative is the lack of transparency. Donor-advised funds face many criticisms for their insufficient public disclosures and requirements about their holdings and their payouts. Another negative would be the high fees. Some of them have high fees, high minimums in order to get in. Some funds require a high initial investment and then maybe smaller amounts on an ongoing basis. So this was a research study done by Amy Arnett, a portfolio strategist for Morningstar Research. She says that some sponsors, such as Vanguard Charitable, require a $25,000 minimum and initial contribution. Well, those donor-advised funds also come with an additional layer of annual administrative cost to administer what is happening within those funds for those gifts. Fidelity, Vanguard, and Schwab all charge 60 basis points, that's 0.6 administrative fee for accounts with balances up to $500,000. Grants in a donor-advised fund made to charities are also subject to a minimum donation amount. So again, they do have, at the same time, they also lack a little bit of flexibility that they also offer as an advantage. Schwab and Fidelity both require minimum grants of $50, while Vanguard requires a minimum of $500 for each grant. So, how do you determine if a donor-advised fund is right for you? Whether it aligns with your philanthropic goals, number one, I talked about that. We have to assess those goals. We have to look at what are your priorities when it comes to making a gift, who you want to give it to, and whether or not the donor-advised funds will align with your charitable giving philosophy. The other big one is financial and tax planning. So when we look at this, typically a donor-advised fund is part of a larger tax plan or financial plan where the funds are integrated into a plan to get a tax deduction, then post-direct where you want that money to go. Main goal, minimizing your tax liability. Here's what I've said for years, with donor-advised funds, you want to make sure you're charitable. We've talked about tax planning and we've put tax plans together for people, but if you don't have charitable intent to begin with, then the tax deduction most likely always never makes sense. So you have to have that intent first, then the tax deduction really is a no-brainer. Here's the advice. Consult with an advisor. Seek professional guidance from somebody who can help you build a comprehensive financial plan that could potentially build in a donor-advised fund, but more importantly, help assess the complex world of donor-advised funds and tailor a plan specific to your giving needs. All right, That's it for this week's Ascend 360 Insider. Do you have a specific question or topic you'd like covered? Leave a comment in the comment section below and let me know. Thanks again for tuning in. I'm Bill Smith, and I'll see you next week.